Now, guys, development is not just about all nature or nurture, even continuity or discontinuity, and stability or change. So they all characterize our lifespan development. Now, the key to development is the interaction of the nature and nurture than either factor alone. So it's a matter of both and instead of either or. Now, both genes and environment, of course, are important for a person even to exist. Without genes, there's no person. Without environment, there's no person again. Now, heredity and environment cooperate and interact together. So, to produce a person's intelligence, temperament, for instance, height, weight, ability, and etc. Now, people inherit their chromosomes, which contain their genes from their parents. So, we each have Wait, we each have 46 chromosomes. And before I continue, so allow me to discuss some important terms here, basic genetics. When we say gene, basic unit of genetic information. So genes determine the inherited characters. Genome, on the other hand, is the collection of genetic information. Chromosomes, so these are the storage units of genes. Now, when we say DNA, I hope I'll be able to pronounce it correctly. So this is deoxyribonucleic acid. No, so that's DNA that contains the genetic instructions specifying the biological development of all cellular forms of life. Now, you might find the discussion very scientific, but we will just go with the very basic one. So, no need for us to discuss further on genetics. It's just that the bottom line is this is not just about development, but this human development involves also the characteristics or some basic information on genetics. Now, people inherit their chromosomes, which contains their genes, of course, from their parents, as what I mentioned earlier. So we each have 46 chromosomes in 23 pairs. Okay. And then children randomly get one of each pair of chromosomes from their mother and one of each pair from their father, with the 23rd pair called the sex chromosomes. Now, having two X chromosomes means a female. A male has one X and one Y chromosome. Now, each daughter gets an X from her mother and an X from her father. So each son therefore gets an X from his mother and a Y from his father. So how do genes pass from parent to child? So to form a fetus, an egg from the mother and sperm from the father come together. The egg and sperm each have one half of a set of chromosomes. The egg and sperm guys together give the baby the full set of chromosomes. That's how we can inherit some things from our mother and some from our father. Okay, let's proceed with genetic disorder and abnormalities. Genetic disorder happens when a gene or genes has a problem with its code, and this causes a health problem. So sometimes a genetic disorder happens when a child inherits it from one or both parents. Other times it happens only in the child and the parents do not have the genetic disorder. Genetic disorders can happen for so many reasons and are often described in terms of the chromosome that contains the gene. So if the gene is on one of the first 22 pairs of chromosomes, and we call that autosomes, the genetic disorder is called as autosomal condition. If the gene is on the X chromosome, on the other hand, the disorder is called X-linked. Now, dominant diseases, guys, can be caused by only one copy of a gene with a DNA mutation. So if one parent has the disease, each child has a 50% chance of inheriting the mutated gene. So for recessive diseases, both copies of a gene must have a DNA mutation in order to get one of these diseases. So if both parents have one copy of the mutated gene, this time each child has a 25% chance of having disease. Though neither parent has that one. So in such cases, each parent is called a carrier of the disease. Now, the question is, how do genetic disorders happen? So different things can cause a genetic disorder. For example, a change, or we call that as mutation, in one gene on a chromosome. Okay. Another is a missing part of a chromosome. We call that deletion. Another reason is genes shifting from one chromosome to another. We call that as translocation. And an extra or missing chromosome. Also, too few or too many sex chromosomes. Now, in the case of Down syndrome, so it's something to do with missing chromosomes. Okay. Now, like every living thing has a set of characteristics inherited from its parent or parents, and this is about the genetics of human traits. So mostly, if, for example, you trace why are you acting like this one, so why you are possessing this trait, and if you hear most of the time, for example, with your grandparents, that you inherited that trait, for example, being caring, being sweet from your mother, for example. So that's about the genetics of human traits. One is intelligence, guys. So like most aspects of human behavior and cognition, intelligence is a complex trait that is influenced by both genetic and, of course, environmental factors. Now, intelligence is challenging to study because, in part, it can be defined and measured in different ways. So, most definitions of intelligence include the ability to learn from experiences and adapt to changing environments. So elements of intelligence include the ability to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, and understand complex ideas. So many studies rely on a measure of intelligence, and we call this as intelligent quotient, also known as IQ. So meaning intelligence is also being inherited. So this is not just acquired, but inherited as well. Eye color. A person's color results from pigmentation of a structure called the iris, so which surrounds the small black hole in the center of the eye. We call that the pupil. and helps control how much light can enter the eye. So the color of the iris ranges on a continuum from very light blue to dark brown. So most of the time, eye color is categorized as blue, green, or even brown. So brown is the most frequent eye color worldwide. So eye color is determined by variations in a person's genes. So most of the genes associated with eye color are involved in the production, transport, or storage of a pigment. We call it as melanin. So eye color is directly related to the amount of melanin in the front layers of the iris or iris. So people, guys, with brown eyes have a large amount of melanin in the iris, while people with blue eyes have much less of this pigment. Another are the fingerprints. Now, each person's fingerprints, guys, are unique. So, which is why they have long been used as a way to identify individuals. Okay, thumb marks. Surprisingly, little is known about the factors that influence a person's fingerprint patterns. So, like many other complex traits, studies suggest that both genetic and environmental factors play a role. A person's fingerprints are based on the patterns of skin ridges. We call this as dermatolograph, rather dermatoglyphs on pads of the finger. So these ridges are also present on the toes, the palms of the hands, and the soles of the feet. Although the basic curl, arc, and loop patterns may be similar, the details of the patterns are specific to each color. That's why fingerprints are unique to each individual. The basic size, shape, and spacing of dermatoglyphs appear to be influenced by genetic factors. And most of the studies suggest that multiple genes are involved so that inheritance pattern is not straightforward. So genes that control the development of the various layers of skin as well as of the muscles, fat, and blood vessels underneath the skin may all play a role in determining the pattern of ridges. So meaning one genetic human trait is fingerprints or our fingerprints. Another is handedness. Are you a left-handed person or a right-handed person? No. So we also call this as hand preference. So this is the tendency to be more skilled and comfortable using one hand instead of other tasks for such as writing and throwing a ball. So although the percentage differs worldwide, so in Western countries, 85 to 90% of people are right-handed and 10 to 15% of people are left-handed. Mixed handedness, preferring both hands, are uncommon, no? So this is very rare. Hand preference, guys, becomes increasingly apparent in early childhood and tends to be consistent throughout life. However, little is known about its biological basis. So hand preference probably arises as part of the developmental process that differentiates the right and left sides of the body. So more specifically, handedness appears to be related to differences between the right and left halves of the brain. So the right hemisphere controls movement on the left side of the body, while the left hemisphere controls movement on the right side. Another genetic human trait factor is having twin babies. Okay. So usually when there are twins in the family, it will also be seen in the next generation. This might not be on the immediate family. it can be transferred to another family, no, which belongs to the clans, and that's because of genetics factor. So the likelihood of conceiving twins is again a complex trait, meaning that is affected by multiple genetic and of course environmental factors. So depending on the type of twins. So the two types of twins are classified as monozygotic and dizygotic. So monozygotic twins are called as identical twins. So they occur when a single egg cell is fertilized by a single sperm cell. So the resulting zygote splits into two very early in development. So leading the formation of the separate embryos. Now, MZ or identical twins occur in 3 to 4 per 1,000 births worldwide. So that's the ratio. Another genetic factor is the hair texture. So genetic factors appear to play a major role in determining hair texture. Uh, is it straight, wavy, curly? And another is the thickness of individual strands of hair. So you can check your hair texture and compare them to your parents, to your siblings, and you will agree with what is being stated as the hair texture to be the one genetic factor. Okay. Now, studies suggest, guys, that different genes influence hair texture and thickness in people of different ethnic backgrounds or group. Height. So, scientists estimate that 80% of an individual's height is determined by DNA or DNA sequence variations they have inherited. But which genes these changes are in and what they do to affect the height are only partially understood. So some rare gene variants have dramatic effects on height. Okay. Who among you have dimples?
Ako po, ma'am.
Okay, let me see later. Titignan ko nga yan. So, indentations on the cheeks tend to occur in families, no? So, and this trait is assumed to be inherited. Okay, so you might compare your dimples with your siblings, also with your parents. So, dimples are usually, guys, considered a dominant genetic trait. So, which means that one copy of the altered gene in each cell is sufficient to cause dimples. However, some researchers say that there is no proof that dimples are inherited. There's this research which is being done to explore the genetics of dimples, and it's not known yet which gene or genes may be involved. But for now, it's more of it's more of one for one a genetic factor. They also consider dimples as abnormalities too, right? Okay. Now, the duration of human life, we call that as longevity, is also influenced by genetics, the environment, of course, and the lifestyle, definitely. So, environmental improvements beginning in 1900s extended the average lifespan dramatically with significant improvements in the availability of food and clean water. So, better housing and living conditions, reduce exposure to infectious diseases, and access to medical care. Now, most significant were public health advances that reduce premature death by decreasing the risk of infant mortality, increasing the chances of surviving childhood, and avoiding infection and communicable diseases. Now, people live about 80 years on average. So, but some individuals survive for much longer, no? So, for example, when you reach the age of 100, the government will give you 100,000 pesos. Okay? So I guess this is one ordinance, no, in the Philippines, no, in every local government. The siblings and children of long-lived individuals, guys, are more likely to remain healthy longer and to live an older age than their peers. So people with centenarian parents are less likely at age 70 to have the age-related diseases that are common among older adults. Now, similar temperaments with a family may be attributable to shared genetics and to environment in which an individual is raised. So, studies of identical twins, on the other hand, and their non-twin siblings show that genetics play a large role. Now, identical twins typically have very similar temperaments when compared with their other siblings. So,